My husband skipped my birthday for a client dinner, so I texted, "Say hi to the man in suite 1408. I sent it while the candles were still burning unevenly on the cake I hadn't cut. The frosting had begun to sweat under the warm lights, sliding slowly, like time I had wasted believing him. The apartment was too quiet, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant laughter from the street below. Somewhere, people were celebrating honestly. My phone screen stayed lit in my hand. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. I imagined the moment on his end, the dim hotel lighting, the soft clink of glasses, the sudden tightening in his chest. The way his eyes would dart, calculating who knew, what was exposed, how quickly he could escape. A second later, my phone rang. I didn't answer. Instead, I looked at the empty chair across from me, the one I had set carefully with his favorite plate, and felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Not heartbreak, precision. I've always been the kind of woman people don't notice until something stops working. In our marriage, that meant I was the quiet architecture, appointments scheduled before he remembered them, gifts chosen for his clients so he could take the credit, apologies drafted in my tone when he forgot someone important. He called me steady like it was a compliment, like it didn't really mean predictable. We met when I was still learning how to shrink myself into acceptable shapes. He was loud, charming, the kind of man who could fill a room without realizing who he pushed out of it. I mistook that for confidence. He mistook my silence for agreement. Over time, I became the background to his foreground. At dinners, he'd tell stories I had lived through, editing me out like I was unnecessary detail. If I corrected him even gently, he'd laugh and say, "You remember everything," like it was a flaw. And I did remember everything. Every canceled plan, every late night that didn't quite make sense. Every time I chose not to ask a question, because I already knew the answer would insult me. He thought my quiet meant I wasn't keeping score. He never realized I was the one writing it. The first time he missed something important, he sent flowers, not to me. He had them delivered to the office with a note that said, "She understands my schedule." His assistant smiled when I came by that afternoon, as if I should be proud of being so accommodating. I thanked her, carried the bouquet home, and watched the petals brown faster than they should have. After that, it became a pattern. He would pause mid-conversation when his phone buzzed, his thumb hovering just a second too long before replying. If I asked who it was, he'd tilt the screen away, not abruptly, just enough to make it look casual and say, "Work." At dinners, his attention drifted. His eyes would flick past me, catching on something or someone behind my shoulder. Once I turned to follow his gaze and found nothing there. When I looked back, he smiled like I'd imagined it. "Relax," he'd say softly, almost amused. "You think too much." Even his compliments carried edges. "You're low maintenance," he told me once, brushing past me to answer another call. Like I required so little, I barely existed. I started noticing the pauses, the way his voice changed when he said certain names, the faint trace of unfamiliar cologne that didn't belong to him, or to me. He wasn't hiding well. He just didn't think I was looking. The realization didn't arrive as a shock. It settled in quietly, like dust finally visible in the right light. It happened a week before my birthday. He was in the shower, his phone lighting up on the nightstand beside me. I wasn't looking for anything. I had trained myself not to, but the screen turned. Just enough for a name to catch. Suite 1408. Not a person, not even an attempt to pretend, just a place. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't need to. Patterns had already drawn the outline. This was just the final line connecting them. The late client dinners. The careful way he said certain nights were non-negotiable. The distance that felt rehearsed rather than accidental. That night when he stepped out of the bathroom, steam trailing behind him, he smiled like everything was intact. "Big week coming up," he said, already distracted. "I might be tied up on your birthday." "Important client." I nodded, matching his calm. Of course. Something in me shifted then, not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet decision locking into place. I stopped waiting for proof. I started planning for confirmation. By the time my birthday arrived, I already knew where he would be. And more importantly, I knew exactly what I would say. I didn't confront him. Confrontation would have given him time to deny, to reshape the narrative, to make me question my own certainty. Instead, I prepared. My work had always been quiet. Precise. Contracts, client management, the kind of details people skim until they matter. I understood patterns, access, timing. More importantly, I understood him. What he feared wasn't guilt. It was exposure without control. I started with the smallest adjustments. I updated shared passwords under the pretense of security checks, ensuring I could see what I needed without raising suspicion. His calendar told me enough. Vague entries, recurring gaps that aligned too neatly with client dinners. Cross-referencing was simple. Hotels don't hide their availability. They just assume no one is looking closely. Suite 1408 wasn't random. It was reserved repeatedly under variations of his name. I documented everything. Dates, receipts, confirmations. Not obsessively, methodically. Clean, undeniable. Then I made one call. A quiet conversation with someone who understood discretion better than emotion ever could. Not a friend, a professional. By the time my birthday arrived, nothing I would do depended on his reaction. That was the point. I wasn't trying to catch him. I was making sure he couldn't escape being seen. I didn't go to the hotel. I stayed exactly where I was supposed to be. At home. In the soft glow of candles that had already burned too low. Precision, I had learned, wasn't about proximity. It was about timing. At 8:47 p.m. I sent the message. Say hi to the man in suite 1408. No accusations, no names. Just enough truth placed carefully in the open. Then I waited. Across the city, I imagined the shift. The slight tightening of his shoulders. The polite excuse made too quickly. The chair scraping just a little too loud against the floor. The kind of small disruption that draws attention without explanation. My phone lit up almost instantly. His name. Calling once, twice, then again, more urgently. I let it ring. A few minutes later, a different notification appeared. The hotel. Short, formal, confirming what had just been reported. What had been witnessed. What was now documented. I blew out the candles one by one. Each thin trail of smoke curling upward, dissolving quietly into the air. When the final flame disappeared, my phone buzzed again. A message this time. Please answer. I turned the screen face down. For the first time in a long while, nothing in me rushed to respond. He came home before dawn. Not loudly, not angrily, just undone. His shirt was wrinkled. His voice thinner than I had ever heard it. He didn't ask how I knew. He didn't deny anything. He stood in the doorway like someone who had finally understood that the room had been watching him all along. I can explain, he said, but the sentence didn't go anywhere. By then, it didn't need to. The consequences didn't arrive all at once. They unfolded the way truth does, quietly, then everywhere. Calls he wasn't expecting, meetings that ended too quickly. The subtle shift in tone when people spoke to him, polite but distant, as if something essential had been recalculated. Reputation is fragile like that. Not because of what people say, but because of what they now know. Even our circle changed. Invitations slowed. Conversations shortened. No one asked me directly, but their eyes lingered a second longer, measuring what I had chosen to tolerate and what I hadn't. And that's why it matters. Not the betrayal itself. People betray every day. It's the moment someone decides they are no longer the easiest place to hide it. Because once that changes, everything else has to. In the end, nothing dramatic happened between us. No shouting, no shattered glass, just a series of quiet decisions that closed. Doors he didn't realize were already unlocked. I moved through the apartment slowly in the days that followed. Not like a guest, but like someone finally taking ownership of the space she had been maintaining all along. He tried in small ways. Softer voice, longer pauses, the kind of careful attention that arrives too late to be believed. I listened when necessary, but I no longer absorbed anything that required me to shrink. The professional I had called handled the rest. Clean, structured, unemotional. Assets divided. Accounts separated. No room left for reinterpretation. What surprised me wasn't the loss. It was the silence that followed and how peaceful it felt. When it no longer belonged to him, I started rebuilding in ways that had nothing to do with recovery. Work expanded. Decisions became sharper. I stopped explaining myself where no explanation was owed. People began to notice me differently. Not because I had changed, because I had stopped allowing myself to be overlooked. The last thing I packed was the set of candles from that night. I didn't throw them away. I kept them unlit, a reminder that I will never again wait in the dark for someone who already chose not to come home.